Ooh, I can definitely relate to that. I remember the first time I took mushrooms intentionally, it was like I was reborn.
I know there are certainly a number of people who can relate to that feeling, and even that mushrooms have provided them a new life, in a way, resurrection. Welcome to episode 5 of Mocktails and Mushrooms, the podcast where we sip on delicious, non-alcoholic mocktails and talk about the world of psychedelic mushrooms. Today's topic, the spiritual power of mushrooms. I'm Jimmy Smers, your host and guide. I'm a spirituality and psychedelic educator and founder of Yoga on the Green, where we combine yoga and plant medicine and work with the science of spirituality.
And I'm Ashley Ryan, your co-host and guide. I teach people about mushrooms, wellness, spirituality, love, and personal growth. Check out my blog at thenaughtyprofessor.com and YouTube channel at Mushlust, where I share tips on how to have fun and meaningful experiences with mushrooms. And by fun, I imply naughty.
We are psyched to share our passion for mushrooms with you. We are also co-founders of Psych4 Media, a psychedelic media company that produces this podcast and other projects. We are on a mission to spread the word about the benefits of sacred mushrooms for healing, connection, and enlightenment. We also love to spread the word about the power of community healing.
And we want to thank our sponsor right here in our community, Tequila Blues, a cozy spot in Denver that serves delicious drinks, including mocktails. This is my favorite, the lavender mocktail. We're recording this podcast live at the bar. We welcome you to join us or tune in online. You can also interact with us through our website, mocktailsandmushrooms.com.
We have a quick disclaimer. The material presented in this podcast is for adults 21 and over and is intended to be educational. This is not legal or medical advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional guidance. Please use your own discretion and consult with a medical professional before using mushrooms or other substances.
That's right. Today, we are going to talk about the spiritual power of psychedelic mushrooms.
That's right, Ashley. Are you ready to explore the power of mushrooms and spirituality?
I am, Jimmy. Are you ready?
I am ready. We have lots to talk about. We're going to talk about how sacred mushrooms can induce mystical experiences, foster compassion and empathy, and resonate with the Christian teachings and align in tantric philosophy.
We are also going to talk about our hopes and visions for the future in Colorado and beyond.
And we want to hear from you. If you have a story or a question, you're invited to share and join our conversation. You can also add comments on our Facebook videos.
Just write your question down on a Post-it note provided and pass it to us, and we would love for you to participate.
At this year's Psychedelic Science Conference, I attended 3 different sessions that specifically discussed the combinations of psychedelics and religion. The first one was on psychedelics and Buddhism. The second was on psychedelics and Christianity. And surprisingly, the third was on psychedelics and the Muslim faith. But before we dive too deep into these topics, let's start with some basics.
What are mystical experiences?
Why, that is a great question, Ashley. Mystical experiences aren't really easy to define or measure because they are subjective and personal. However, researchers have tried to come up with some criteria and scales to capture some of the common features of these experiences.
Indeed, Jimmy, one of the most widely used scales is the State of Consciousness questionnaire. This questionnaire has 7 scales that measure different aspects of mystical experiences, such as internal unity, external unity, transcendence of time and space, ineffability and paradoxicality, sense of sacredness, as well as noetic quality and deeply felt positive mood.
Well, that is quite the list, Ashley. Would you mind explaining what each of those scales actually means?
Sure, Jimmy. Internal unity means the feelings within oneself are integrated or unified. External unity means the feelings outside of oneself are interconnected or one. Transcendence of time and space means that one is beyond the limits of time and that they don't feel like they exist. Ineffability and paradoxicality mean that the feelings or the experience are impossible to describe in words or can contain contradictions. A sense of sacredness means the feeling is the feeling is holy or sacred. It involves a higher power. Noetic means that it feels like you have become aware of some objective truth or knowledge that is normally hidden or inaccessible to you. And deeply felt positive mood just means that you feel joy, peace, love, gratitude, or awe during the experience.
Well, that was very clearly explained. We certainly do appreciate it.
Sure. So what did you learn that the research says about how common mystical experiences are among people who take psilocybin mushrooms?
Well, I did find one study from New York University in 2021 where about 80% of the people who had a full-on mystical experience during their session, and these experiences were not only mind-blowing and meaningful for them, it really helped them feel better mentally and emotionally.
Wow, that's amazing. How was that?
Well, the study found that psilocybin-assisted therapy significantly reduced symptoms of depression, anxiety, hopelessness, and even suicidal thoughts among people who really are sad and stressed out. It also made them feel more satisfied with their lives, more spiritual, more connected to others, and more optimistic.
Wow.
The research from NYU also supports not only the healing potential of psychedelic-assisted therapy, but also the importance of including spiritual aspects of these psychedelic experiences.
So part of how sacred mushrooms can help people heal is by giving them mystical experiences that can change their outlook on life.
That is right, Ashley. And not only that, but psilocybin mushrooms can also change our sense of who we are and where we belong.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, it actually changes the boundaries of our ego.
Ooh, ego boundaries. Those are the mental walls that separate us from other people and things. Okay, so how do psilocybin mushrooms mess with those?
Well, psilocybin can make our ego boundaries melt or completely disappear temporarily during the trip. This can also make us feel more connected to other people, animals, plants, and even objects. It can also make us feel more empathetic, compassionate, and kind towards others. Some people report feeling like they are one with everything or a higher form of consciousness.
Oh, that's beautiful. Why does that happen, though?
Well, scientists think that the mushrooms affect a part of the brain called the default mode network. This network is made up of parts of the brain that are active when we are not doing anything necessarily specific, like daydreaming or self-reflecting or letting the mind wander. It's also involved in maintaining our sense of self and ego. When we take psilocybin, the default mode network becomes less active and less organized, which means that that part of the brain talks less with other parts. This leads to a breakdown of our normal sense of self.
That's fascinating. So mushrooms can literally change the way our brains work and how we see ourselves in the world.
Exactly, Ashley. And this can have huge implications for our personal growth and development. Some people say that mushrooms help them overcome their fears, insecurities, traumas, or negative patterns of thinking. Some people say that mushrooms help them discover their true purpose, passion, and potential. Some people say that mushrooms can actually help them appreciate the beauty and wonder of life and everything on this planet.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that. I remember the first time I took mushrooms intentionally, it was like I was reborn.
I know there are certainly a number of people who can relate to that feeling, and even that mushrooms have provided them a new life, in a way, resurrection.
So mushrooms can induce mystical experiences, alter ego boundaries, but did you know that they can also make us more compassionate and empathetic towards others, Jimmy?
I did, Ashley.
Well, then, Jimmy, why are they so important and beneficial?
Well, compassion and empathy are essential for our well-being, happiness, and social harmony. They help us form meaningful and supportive relationships, cope with stress and adversity, and cooperate with others for the common good. They also motivate us to act in ways that reduce suffering and promote happiness for ourselves and others.
Okay, Jimmy, but how do psychedelic mushrooms increase our compassion and empathy?
Have you heard of a part of the brain called the amygdala?
The amygdala? That's the part of the brain that processes emotions like fear and anger, right?
Exactamundo. Psilocybin has been shown to reduce the activity in the amygdala, which can make us feel less fearful, less angry, and more open and trusting to other people. They can also make us more sensitive to the emotions and feelings of others and more willing to help feel connected with them.
Well, that is pretty cool that mushrooms can have such a positive effect on our social and emotional skills.
And this can have important implications for our social behavior. We are less afraid and more happy. We are more likely to be friendly, cooperative, compassionate with others. We are also less likely to be hostile, aggressive, or violent. We can't say that about other substances like alcohol.
We certainly cannot. Well, that is very impressive. Mushrooms can make us more tolerant, forgiving, and peaceful.
And this can have huge benefits for our society and our world. Imagine if more people took psychedelic mushrooms and became more compassionate and empathetic towards each other. Maybe we could have a little less hatred, discrimination, and violence.
Well, that would be amazing, Jimmy. But is that realistic? I mean, not everyone is willing or able to take mushrooms.
That is true, Ashley. Shrooms are not for everyone, and they are certainly not legal or decriminalized everywhere. But that reminds me of a story I recently saw in the news.
Yeah? What's the story?
Well, it's not actually about psilocybin, but another medicine. You may have heard of it. MDMA, also known as ecstasy.
Well, yes, of course I've heard of MDMA. That also affects the amygdala.
That is correct. This story is about a man named Tony McAller. He was a white supremacist leader in Canada.
Wow, what happened to him?
Well, he had a radical change of heart after an MDMA-assisted therapy session.
Really? How?
Well, he was suffering from guilt and shame for some of his past actions and beliefs. He had hurt many people with his hatred and his violence. He had also alienated his family, his friends, and with his extremism, he was looking for a way to heal himself and make amends.
So how did MDMA help?
Well, the MDMA helped him access his emotions and his feelings that he had suppressed or denied for years. He felt a surge of love and compassion for himself and others. He realized how wrong he was and how much he wanted to change. He also felt a connection with his therapist who supported him throughout his journey.
Oh, wow, Jimmy. I've heard people tell a very similar story after taking mushrooms. That's amazing. What did he do next?
Well, he quit his white supremacist group and started a whole new life. He became an activist and a speaker who works to prevent radicalization and promote peace and tolerance among different groups of people. He also wrote a book about his transformation called The Cure for Hate, a former white supremacist journey from violent extremism to radical compassion.
Wow, that is so inspiring. So MDMA helped him overcome his hatred and guilt and become a better person?
And this is just one of the many ways that psychedelics can help people heal and grow. In fact, some people even find these substances can deepen their faith and spirituality. Speaking of